How long are your classes? Do you see your students 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 times a week? We all have different schedules in our schools and learn to adapt to the time that we have. Now, block schedules, which are extended class periods that meet fewer times in a given week, are becoming more common in many schools and districts. So in this episode, we're talking about teaching in this format. Marilyn Pichardo, who's a Spanish teacher in New Jersey, joins me to talk about teaching in a block schedule for over 2 decades. Lots to learn about planning and class pacing, whether you have 20, 40, 60, or even 85-minute classes. So let's jump in. Whether you're planning your first lesson or celebrating your 20th year in the language classroom, I understand exactly where you are. I'm Joshua Cabral, and I'm also a language teacher in my 29th year of teaching. Now, I also have the opportunity to support schools and teachers all across the country who are working towards increasing proficiency and building confidence in their students. This is the World Language Classroom Podcast, with over 200 episodes of practical strategies tested in real classrooms just like yours and mine. So let's jump in. Vamos, allons-y. Hello, my friends. Bonjour, mes amis. Hola, mis amigos. Welcome to the World Language Classroom Podcast. I am Joshua Cabral, and you know I always have to start by saying thank you so much for being an incredible language teacher who is doing what? You're listening to a podcast about language teaching. I have so much respect for you, so thank you so much for being here. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about a bit of a new topic, and this is really getting in the trenches of what you are doing in your classroom. Now, in a traditional sense, our classrooms might have a schedule where you have a class for maybe 5 times a week, and you have a 45 to 50-minute class, and that's traditionally how it's done. But in more recent years, a lot of schools have been going to what is often referred to as a block schedule. And we'll get into exactly what that means, but it essentially is having this sort of schedule where you have extended periods that are maybe double the length of typical periods. And so to have this conversation today, we're going to be talking with Marilyn Pichardo, who I've gotten to know very well over the last couple of years. I've actually done workshops in her district, in her school, and she is in Montclair, New Jersey. And she's been in Montclair for 24 years, but prior to that, she taught in New York City for 10 years. So Marilyn is in her 34th year of teaching Spanish, and it has all been with middle school students. And she's had the chance to do lots of district work within her own school and her own district with teachers. So she has a wealth of experience. I saw her at a conference this summer, and I said, I want to have you on the podcast. What's something great we can talk about? And she said, maybe block schedules. People aren't talking about that. And so I said, you know what? I don't teach in a block schedule. I'm not an expert on that. So let's have Marilyn on to tell us all about it. So Marilyn Pichardo, welcome to the World Language Classroom Podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here, Joshua.
What are you currently teaching this year? Like, what grades are you teaching?
Well, currently, and for 34 years now, I've been teaching in the middle school. Specifically this year, I'm teaching the 3 novice levels, which is Novice 1, Novice 2, Novice 3. We would know them as Novice Low, Novice Mid, Novice High.
So in your district, you're not calling it sort of Spanish 1A or Spanish 1B. You're actually calling it as the proficiency levels.
Correct. In this way, the high school can pick up with Spanish 1, Spanish 2, Spanish 3, which they correlate with the ACTFL levels of novice, intermediate, and advanced.
I often talk to schools when I am consulting with them about their departments and saying, maybe instead of using the level 1, level 2, could you think about using the proficiency levels and if it works in their schedule? So it's great to hear that that is working successfully in your district. Would you say it's been successful?
It has been. It actually was named Spanish 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the middle school, but then they had Spanish 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. at the high school. So it's very conflicting explaining to parents that your kid is now again in Spanish 1, yet it was a completely different level. So we transitioned to Novice 1, Novice 2, Novice 3.
So I'm assuming, since you've been at this for 34 years, that a big chunk of your career, particularly early on, was with a more traditional schedule. You have them 4 times a week, 5 times a week. So how long have you been living in this world of what we refer to as a block schedule?
So when I started in New York City, I would see the kids maybe twice a week for 40 minutes. I had a total of 11 classes, which is what drove me to New Jersey, where I was offered a position in a building, which is where I am now, that really valued languages. And therefore, the students have a world language the same amount of time that they do their math classes or their language arts classes. I've been doing the block scheduling for 24 years, and I absolutely love it. When I walked into it, I was terrified. I was like, what am I getting into? Going from 40 minutes now to 85 minutes. What am I doing? And so I had to do a lot of learning, a lot of undoing. And finally, I'm at a place where I can't teach if it were not in the block schedule.
And when you have those blocks, how many times a week are you seeing them?
So our program is a A-day, B-day schedule. So every other day for 80 minutes.
So sometimes that would be 3 times a week. So it depends on, it's every other day in your schedule.
So 2 times a week or 3 times a week, depending on the schedule.
I think that some teachers might be new to this concept of block scheduling. And I think what you said is early on, like, what am I going to do with this? It was such a change, and now you wouldn't go back. So this whole idea of having a block schedule, it creates these longer stretches of time with students, so this longer instructional time. So what opportunities have you found over the years? You're in this place where I love these long periods of time. Why is that for you?
More time means more opportunities for students to use the language. Simply put, you teach a theory, right? With a regular schedule, a 40-minute schedule, twice a week like I did in New York, I would teach a concept and then hoping that they would remember by the next time I saw them to put that concept into practice. Impossible. So with this, I can teach the theory and immediately put it into practice. Right now, I'm actually doing household chores. So they're talking in the target language using and reusing, actually recycling vocabulary for gustar, which is to like. So I like to do the dishes, or I don't like to do the dishes. The time allows them to have conversation within themselves first, and then with the class as a whole.
I think if some teachers are not familiar or don't have this in their school, there might be somewhat of this fear that you don't have enough time to cover all of the curriculum. So can you speak to that? Like, do you have time to cover the curriculum, even if you're only seeing them 2 times in 1 week?
You always feel like you never have enough time. Let's be realistic. I mean, you never have enough time to really dig deep into what you really want to dig deep into. But if you take the time to block it out and schedule out, we have 10 weeks in a marking period. If you decide that within those 10 weeks, this is what you need to cover, you'll make it work. You'll use those 2 days, let's say, that week to really dig into the material. And then the next week, you're going to see them 3 weeks, so you can play a game or expand on something that you felt they didn't capture the first time that you presented it.
What does homework look like in a block schedule for you?
So I definitely do more independent stuff. So we lost Flipgrid.
Oh, yeah.
We lost Flipgrid. That was the best thing ever, because they could actually rehearse, they can delete it, they can play it again until they were satisfied, and turn that in for an oral task that I might have assigned. Now I do a lot more reading comprehension with short answer in the target language. And of course, I try to, mix it up a little bit, prepare, because you're going to be talking about this. So, make a list of XYZ. I do assign Duolingo. The kids are obsessed with Duolingo. So I assign that, which actually helps me in the classroom, because they'll come in with vocabulary that I didn't anticipate teaching, and here we are using it because they have learned it and they want to put it into practice. Now, I have a question for you. If Flipgrid is gone, what are we using now?
Oh my gosh, this comes up at every conference. I did come up with a workaround for just audio, and that's
Okay.
just using Vocaroo, which is just an online audio recording website, and you just record and then you can get the link. So it actually uses their own space on their website. And so you can record on it and you can re-record. You can't edit anything. And then when you're done, you just click done and it says, here's the link to your audio. And so I created a Google form. And so students go on to the Google form and they put their name in, they click the link to go to Vocaroo, they record it, they get the link and they go back to the Google form and they just put the link in the Google form. Now, I've really liked it because then when you go to the response sheet, you know how it creates the Google sheet of the responses in the Google form, it's the student's name with the link right next to it. And so I can just quickly listen to them. The thing about it, though, is since it's all audio, you can't really see if they're maybe looking at resources. And so you got to talk to them about that. But it's been my one workaround. And I've actually really liked having it because it's in one place where you can hear students' progression when you do different assignments. When I have conferences with parents, I'll just pull it up and we'll listen to it right there. So it's been one workaround, but I would like to have a video workaround. So let's stay in this area of the class structure that you're talking about here. So sustaining student focus in any kind of classroom is always a challenge, whether it's a 20-minute class or an 85-minute class, right? So what strategies or lesson structures have you found most effective, like within this structure, for keeping students engaged and actively using the Spanish or the target language in this 85-minute time period?
It's called mini segments. You chunk it. You break it up into your quick warm up. In today's day and age, you have to do some social and emotional component in your lesson. So that is the time. ¿Cómo está? How are you today? ¿Cómo estás hoy? Check in with your partner. Check in with 2 or 3 people. During that time, I do my little clerical stuff, take attendance, return homework, or what have you. A little quick warm up. And then I do a teacher-led input activity where I lead, I model with the targeted vocabulary that I may be working with. And then I have them turn to each other. In my classroom, I have them paired in groups. And within those groups, they may have 4 people or 6 people. Obviously, it depends on the size of the class. And then I allow them time to break into small group and have that conversation. I always incorporate a brain break. We need it. I need it as an educator. I do anything like, rock, paper, scissors. I do evolution. There's a ton of things that you guys can look up to find brain breaks to use in a block schedule. And then I have an opportunity for an output task where they're required to demonstrate mastery of whatever. Bell ringers are no longer rushed. Exit tickets are no longer rushed. You have the time. You can, plan it and actually put it in there, and not like in the 40-minute. I always planned for an exit ticket and I never got to it because before you knew it, the bell rang.
So in looking at these mini segments, they are focused on the modes, it seems like that's what you're focusing on. There is an interpretive mode segment. There is a segment where you might be doing some sort of spoken output, interpersonal. So it seems like within this time, you can almost do what I've heard of as like the IPA in a day, where you hit on all of the modes on a topic or theme. So can you think of maybe just an example? And I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, but
That's okay.
Theme or a topic that you've done in a class where you've been able to touch upon the listening comprehension and maybe some reading comprehension, some writing, some interpersonal speaking, all on that theme within that 185-minute period?
That's pretty tough. It's kind of difficult, but it can happen. You may feel a little rushed, so I wouldn't do all the modes in one day. However, today, I'm doing the verb ser, to be, as a review for my novice 2. They're my novice mid students. We did a gallery walk where they had to, with their partner, walk around, and I had in the hallway little paragraphs about, student Martina. Martina talked about where she's from using the verb to be. She talked about, what she's like. Long hair, short hair, she's athletic. And so they had to walk around, read it for some reading comprehension. And then they had a sheet they had to fill out with just bullets, finding out what they discovered about, or writing what they discovered about each person. And then they came back, and all they had access to was their notes, because the paragraphs were in the hallway, so they couldn't see them anymore. And now they had to tell me a little bit about each person. Of course, it was novice mid, so their conversation and their language is choppy, but well understood. They had their notes in front of them. Martina, he might have said, one student that I remember, he said, Martina, soy de Cuba. And I'm like, yo soy de Cuba? And I was pointing to myself, and they were like, oh, no, es. So, they heard themselves. So you can do it. You can do it. You just have to be very intentional with what it is you're trying to get out of the students on that particular day.
When I invite people onto the podcast, and often people will say, how do you find your guests? And a lot of times people reach out to me, but many times I will reach out to people and tell them, talk about this. Because if I would have done this episode about teaching on a block schedule, having never done it and not having the experience, I would say, every day in your block schedule, you should do all of the modes, and you have enough time to do it all. And that would not have flown very well, particularly if people are teaching in a block schedule. So that's why I appreciate having you on as the experienced expert. No, because seriously, the first thing you said to me was, not really, being in the trenches in the real world. So thank you for bringing that. And that is why I have people like you on the podcast who have a different teaching experience than I do. So thank you. I would love to hear maybe a little bit more about some of your brain breaks. People love brain breaks. So what are good brain breaks that happen within your 85-minute class? First off, how many do you think you do? And what are some go-tos that are really great for students?
Meditation, although not considered a brain break, I do start with a 3-minute meditation. The PTA in our district purchased certain teachers a subscription to Calm, and they have short 3-minute meditation for middle schoolers. So I do that. That sets the tone. Okay, we're in Spanish. We're focused. Doesn't matter what I just did, where I just came from. I get super excited right after lunch because the kids are hyper. They have lunch and recess. And so meditation really, really focuses them down and allows them a moment to just breathe. It helps me as well. In the middle of the block, now I can't tell you that at minute number 27, you should, put in a brain break. No, you feel the class. You can see in their faces when they're burnt out. You can feel it when they're, grasping for vocabulary that is not coming to brain. So at that moment, you're like, okay, clase, tiempo. Es hora de un brain break. Es hora de un descanso mental is what I call it. I'll do rock, paper, scissors in español, piedra, papel, tijeras. And if I lose to you, then I would have to get on your back, and then you would verse another person who's leading a line. The person who defeats everybody, and of course I set a timer, always a minute for this break, wins a raffle. I do raffles every other week. I go to the Dollar Tree and I get as many things as I can for $1 to hand out to kids as little prizes. So meditation, a rock, paper, scissors. I do Simón Dice for a minute to see how many kids I can, knock out in that first minute. There's so many.
So I know when teachers listen and they hear something and they're like, I wish Joshua would have asked more about that, because people are going to hear what you just talked about doing your raffle. And so teachers are always trying to find like the incentives with games and activities and everything. And I guarantee you, I want to know more about that raffle you just talked about, as well as I'm sure listeners do too, as they could maybe bring something like that in your classroom. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Part of my $1 million, $85 budget that we get every year for supplies, I always order a roll of raffle tickets, a double one, the one that has the two sides, keep this side and you enter this one. I keep one, I give the students another. They are responsible for holding it. If they lose it, oh well, and I call that number, I pick another number, another raffle. How do they earn raffle tickets? In multiple ways. One of the ways is you're on the leaderboard for an entire month on Duolingo. Another way is when we play GimKit, the top 3 students that win the GimKit has gotten very, very fancy with the different types of games that they play that we can incorporate in language classes. I give raffle tickets for that. I give raffle tickets for the rock, paper, scissors game, whoever wins the entire class. There are days that I'll give raffle tickets to students who can completely understand what I'm saying, and I don't have to break. They don't raise their hand and say, ¿Puedes hablar en inglés, por favor? If they don't say that the entire block, everybody gets a raffle ticket. So those are just a few of the ways. Mm-hmm. What do they get? Well, every other week, I put everything I do blocks again. So for every block, I have a bag labeled with their name. And as they get their half of their ticket, the other half I keep and I put it in a bag. And every Thursday or Friday, depending on when I see that particular class, I pull 3 raffle tickets per class. That is it. They never get to choose what they get because sometimes I find multiples of one thing and sometimes I just get one thing of one and it's unfair. So I'll just pull it out. They never know what it is. I feel that the most successful item is one of those Spanish pens that serve as a maraca as well. Mm-hmm. They love annoying their other teachers with it. They'll rattle it the entire time. And of course, then a teacher will come to me and say, do they have to use it? I'm like, it's up to you. In my class, they can use it. But they love it. It's an incentive to stay in the target language, to produce for me, to perform for me. I've been doing it for a couple of years now. A little costly, but Dollar Tree helps out a little bit.
Well, I am totally going to do this. I'm like so excited right now. I'm like, okay, when can I quickly get to the store to how much is in my budget? Can I make this work? Or is there something else? But I love that whole concept. So we derailed a little bit right there, but I know that's going to be a great takeaway for some teachers. But I did want to ask about the question of assessment. Mm-hmm. And when you're giving assessments in a block schedule, sort of what does that look like for you? Do you give them because I'm assuming you're not using 85 minutes to give an assessment.
Not at all.
So do you do some sort of review or other topics and then do the assessment at the end? Do you put it in the middle? What does it look like when it's sort of assessment day?
So, with students, everything is procedures, right? So in the beginning, I always start with the actual assessment, only because I want them to take their time at home to practice, rehearse. I do have students with IEP, which I absolutely love. When I was in New York, if the student had an IEP, they couldn't take a language. Here they make, accommodations for that. Mm-hmm. And of course, some of them have, extended time in their accommodations. So I have to put in for that. So I always have a backup game. I also create a ton of Google created games that they can play on their own. So on the day of an assessment, I'll have 2 or 3 of those prepared, sometimes previewing the next topic, and sometimes depending on how, I confident I feel about how they've mastered it, it'll be related to the topic that I'm assessing at that moment. And once you're done, you turn in your quiz, your test or whatever, and then you get to go onto your device with headphones, no sound, and you can, play those activities. I have a list that I put in Google Classroom. They're always asking, is this for a grade? And I'm like, you always have to put your best foot forward. Give me the best that you've got, regardless of grade. Most students don't take 85 minutes, but I'm supposed to allow the time and a half for certain students. Now, if most students are done and that one IEP student is still working, I'll take the kid and I'll take him to my colleague's room, which, thank goodness, we don't teach at the same time many times. And so they'll sit with that student and help them finish if needed.
So for teachers who are maybe transitioning, or they're being told that next year we're going to be starting this sort of schedule in our schools, and so what would you recommend, say, resources? What are some of your go-to resources for students that helps them to stay on task, or maybe routines as well? But just if somebody's looking to find ideas to, how can I make this work with my students? What have been some really useful resources that you've provided to students?
My number one thing right now are chat mats. Chat mats are a savior because it has targeted vocabulary for that specific topic or theme that you're working on. On my chat mats, which I self-create, I have targeted vocabulary plus a section called Te Toca a Ti, it is your turn, where the students have to use the vocabulary for personal reasons. I always put personal questions, and then they have to share. They have to pair share with their partner, and then they have to find someone else outside of their table to share with. And all this is done in the target language. I do have a sign, a red and green sign. The green sign says it doesn't matter what language you communicate in, so long as you're communicating. The red sign says, en español solamente, por favor. So they can only speak Spanish. And I have clothing pins that I allot 3 per student per day. They put them on their collar. And if that red card is up, which means that it's a Spanish only segment, and Joshua, let's say you accidentally speak in English, well, I'm your partner. I'll say pincho, and I gladly remove your pincho from your collar, add it to mine. And at the end of class, the student, or if it's paired, the partner who has the most pinchos gets the raffle ticket.
Oh,
so they are constantly listening out for each other. Inglés, hablas en inglés. So you hear that a lot in my class. No inglés, señora dice no inglés. Another motivator to keep them in the target language. But chat mats are my go-to right now, because it's, they work with the vocabulary that they're most comfortable with, and they're still talking about the topic. They're staying within topic.
Yeah, I think the chat mats, they're so useful, and they can sometimes be a lot of work to create. So do you, by chance, you have some that maybe you could share with teachers that they might be able to get?
Yeah, I just launched September 1st, actually August 31st, because I couldn't wait for Labor Day. I launched my ChatMat membership, which affords each member a series of chat mats per month on a specific topic. So every month, if you're part of the membership, you receive a chat mat plus bonus activities. The month of September, it was 2 chat mats talking about todo sobre mí, all about me. And they got 2 chat mats and how to incorporate a teacher usage, how to use. And it included also some ringer activities and some puzzles that the kids can do, like word searches. Wow. So they always include a bonus something.
Wow. So when I asked what a resource is, and you're like, oh, chat mats, I wasn't expecting you to be like the queen of chat mats, where you have a membership where you're creating all these chat mats. I was like, oh, she uses chat mats. Those are great. And she was like, not only do I create them, but I am the creator of them. So I will definitely make sure that there are links in the show notes so that teachers can jump over and become a part of your Queen of the Chat Mats membership that you're creating
for
there.
For sure. We call it the Chat Mat Club.
Oh, the Chat Mat Club. Okay, that's wonderful. Okay. So there's a lot to take in when we're talking about all of the scheduling and what your classes look like. And for a language teacher who is transitioning from a traditional schedule into a block schedule, what are some things that you have learned to do? And then what have you learned along the way about what you should not do? So this is like your pro tips. Like, you think you're going to, when Joshua thought, 10 minutes ago that you can do all of the modes in one class. And this is like, no, Joshua, you can't do that. So what are your pro tips of what to do and what to maybe avoid?
If you could, I'm not a DJ by far, but I've observed a few DJs in my life. They're always anticipating the next song while they're within the song that's actually playing. You want to be that DJ in your classroom. You want to know what's happening next. Where do you want to take your students next? You want to have that ready. That would be, I guess, part of your lesson plan. You don't want the kids to lose energy. You want to keep them on their toes. So read the room. It's like the DJ. You read the room. This song is not doing so well. Let me mix it in with something else. Pull out a brain break and then redirect the students as you would like. What would I suggest you never do? Don't underestimate the time. You think that you can take that 40 minutes and stretch it, you're gonna regret that. You want to overplan, perhaps, have extra activities. Yeah, plan for that exit ticket. Do that final checkout at the end of the class. And have a bag of tricks. These are 10 things that I would and could do should I have an additional 10 minutes. Should I have underplanned this particular day. I have a number of things that I have the kids, I pull out for the kids. Many schools are one-on-one right now. Every kid has a device. pull out the device.
So where are you continuing to learn as an educator? What recommendations might you have? Are there conferences, people? What's some recommendations for your continued learning journey for our listeners?
Well, I'm a definite avid listener of your podcast. And granted, I've been doing this for 34 years, but you have to keep reinventing yourself and, renewing, I would say, your vows to education and come up with new things and innovative things. Conferences, your state conferences are definite go-tos. And other world language PD, sometimes online, sometimes, I'll just find something randomly and I'll listen to it because it's free. Take advantage of whatever's out there that is also free. Sometimes It's just limited for a day or two, but, take your time, take time. We need to grow. We need to grow in education. We need to, keep motivating ourselves to be better.
So I'm definitely going to put the link to get some of your chat mats in the show notes. But how else could our listeners be reaching out with you, Marilyn?
Absolutely. I'm on Instagram at Perfect Spanish Plans by Marilyn. I'm also on TikTok. I'm learning that game, so be gentle to me when you go on my TikTok. Perfect Spanish Plans by Marilyn as well.
So before we say our goodbyes, is there one piece of hearty advice that you can leave with teachers? It could be about teaching, it could be about life. It doesn't have to be about block scheduling, but just what's some hearty advice for us?
Yeah, well, block scheduling, life, education, just love what you do. Love what you do, because when you love what you do, it permeates through your skin and your kids know it. The kids, I just had a conference with a parent and the parent said to me, "You really love what you do." And I was like, why would you say that out of this conversation that we're having about corrective behavior with your child? And he said, "You're always so bubbly. It's like you never get tired." I'm like, because I love what I do. And I loved, I'm anticipating, I'm putting all this energy in now because I'm going to get something later. So love what you do. The rest is just going to fall, it's going to come on its own.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for all of your insights, for sharing your real experience in the classroom. That speaks more than any sort of theory, but it's like what is actually working for you. And I now am going to forever have this image of you as the DJ in your classroom, where you're going to have like one ear, you're going to have the headphones and you're going to be like scratching records,
I wish I could do that.
Old school in front of your classroom, figuring out what's the next brain break. That's always going to be the image I have for you. But I really appreciate that whole metaphor, analogy, whatever you want to call it, of being aware of what's coming next. I love connecting with teachers who love what they do, and you exude that completely. So thank you so much for everything you've shared and for joining me here on the podcast. I look forward to doing it again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and have a great one.
What are your takeaways from that conversation with Marilyn Pichardo? I know that I picked up some great tips for class routines and can't wait to get started. So be sure to check out the show notes if you want to connect with Marilyn. And thank you personally for all that you do on a daily basis to support and motivate your students. I very much appreciate and enjoy supporting you and your language teacher colleagues as you bring effective, proficiency-focused strategies into your classrooms. As a reminder, I provide on-site workshops, live virtual sessions, self-paced departmental PD, and my new Ready for Tomorrow quick win courses for individual teachers just like you. You can find all the links in the show notes or on my website, wlclassroom.com. I will talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. And let's stay connected on social media. You can find me at WL Classroom pretty much everywhere. You'll also find lots of ideas, suggestions, and resources on my website, wlclassroom.com. Now stay curious, keep learning, and continue the great work you do inspiring and supporting your students.